Your mom's a hoe.
Why would you say that?
Not yours.
What?
Your mom's a hoe.
Why would you say that?
Not yours.
What?
I could use that. I could just put that in the beginning clip. Your mom's a hoe. Whoa, what the hell? Everybody, why? So everybody wonder what the hell. And then I'll make like a trailer for a movie and then not put it in the actual video. So then everyone's waiting to find out why that happened. That would be a good exercise, by the way. Ask your parents. Ask them tonight, actually. What do you want from me in life? You know, think about the kinds of answers you would probably get. That's probably the most common answer you would get. I just want you to be happy. You know, anything else? Healthy. Healthy and happy. Okay. No, is that enough? Like, think about if you had children, what you'd want for them. Is that all you'd want for them?
Well, weird tangent there.
No, it's a really hard question, and I don't know necessarily the answer to it, of course. But I think I was mentioning, as a student from last year, she, I won't give away too much about her. She told me that essentially her dad dropped out of school. I think she said like in 6th grade or something like that, or 5th grade. And her mom dropped out in junior high school, both in junior high school. And then they came to this country, they got married, worked very, very hard, and did very, very well with it. So they've got some money. And it was interesting. It's interesting to have dropped out so early, but it does tell you something, by the way. Like if we think like, oh, you have to go to college to be successful, the skill set that you need to be successful in college is very similar to the skill set that you need to be successful in life. And so in other words, should you go to college or should you not? If you have the skill set to be successful in one of those areas, you probably have the skill set to be successful in both of those areas. So, if you decide to put your efforts into college, into that kind of a career, fine. If instead you take that same skill set and you put it into life, you're probably going to be fine. It isn't like, you have to go to college because college will give you a skill set. Ideally, I suppose it should, but like really what's the skill set that it gives you? If you're going to be an engineer or an architect, sure, it can teach you the academic set that you need in order to be an architect. But how many careers in life really need you to go to college? Like you go to college and you get a degree in, I don't know, chemistry or whatever, and you become an insurance agent. Like there's not really a connection, but the point is that in order to get that degree in chemistry, you have to be self-motivated, you have to be disciplined, you have to have a whole bunch of skills. If in real life you're motivated and disciplined, you're going to be successful in whatever area you go into. In other words, it isn't so much about the place that you go, it's about the skill set that you bring with you into those places. And so should you go to college? I don't know, if you want to, I suppose. Do you have the skill set to be successful there? And the skill set that you need very rarely is going to be you have to be brilliant. That's a pretty small segment of the population. The question is, do you bring a skill set there that's, are you curious? Are you self-motivated? Again, are you disciplined? Can you meet deadlines? If you're all of those things, you're gonna do well in life whether you go to college or not. And you're gonna find a lot of opportunities. If instead you're just you're dull, you're not curious, you're undisciplined, it doesn't really matter if you go to college or not. You're not going to be successful in either direction you go in life. How do you find out what you enjoy doing? Well, that's how you find out what you enjoy doing. You do a bunch of stuff. Now I wonder how many of us have parents though who would put us into a painting class just because we said we wanted to try painting. How many of us would put us into a horseback riding class just because we said that we were interested in horses? Probably not many of us. So you're right, we do find the things that we enjoy by trying things. And a lot of times that's also limited by the options that we have available to us. But the options that we have are broader than we think they are a lot of times. In other words, we do have access to more things than we seem to realize that we do. So, I don't know. But that's also one of the ways, by the way, that you become more interesting. You do more stuff. I mean, think about the people who you think are interesting. What's interesting about them? A lot of times it's because they've done things, and you like listening to people talk about things that they've done because it gives you kind of like a little bit of a window and access into the things that they've done. And of course, there's two ways of looking at it. You can look at that girl I was talking about and say, must be nice, and by the way, it is. But think about how you approach that. Must be nice. Why are you so upset about it? You know, because you wish it was you. That isn't, you know, it's not like you're not doing it because she is. You know, it's, you know, she's doing it and there's no reason to be upset with people because they have access to that stuff. You know, maybe that gives us a goal for the future. Why do you suppose she's able to do all that stuff? Because her parents didn't. Her parents sacrificed. Her parents couldn't do those things. So now they're like, want to make sure that my kids have all the access to that stuff that they possibly can. Isn't that a neat way to find out the things that you enjoy, the things that you love? How do you find out what you enjoy? Well, you gotta try it. How do you find out the foods that you like? You gotta try them. How do you find out, whatever your hobbies are? You enjoy them. Like a lot of times we think it'd be great to be famous. Imagine if you were famous. If anybody in here says, I really want to be famous, talk to me, man. Bring me your phone and give me your password. I want to go through your phone. Why? If that scares the shit out of you, you should not try to be famous. Because people are going to go not just through your phone, they're going to go through your life. Everybody you've ever known, they're going to know stuff about you that you didn't even know about yourself. And if that makes you uncomfortable and it kind of weirds you out, then you're probably not ready to be famous. If you're like, yeah, fuck it, go ahead. To anybody. And no, even if you know there's embarrassing stuff on there, then maybe you have the psychological framework to be famous. But that's not for everybody. That's why so many famous people lose their minds. Because it's not easy when you have the whole world looking at you. Man, if any of you guys kind of freak out when your parents are asking you too many questions. Imagine if you got interviewer after interviewer after interviewer and every internet sleuth on the planet looking into your background. How much harder that would be.
You have no privacy.
Yeah, zero privacy. So if you value your privacy, you probably wouldn't do well with that. So we have this kind of distinction between between being alone and lonely. And the things that make us lonely is that we don't feel like we can share our interests, our daily life. And those are kind of like the broader aspects of us as a person. What interests? What kind of interests do you have? What's your daily life like? General. And then we have the things that are more intimate, like your mental health. Who can you share those things with? Because there's different layers here of the things that you can share with people. Maybe you can write an essay in your classroom about what your daily life is like, or you can write about what your interests are, your hobbies. But then if I said, all right, guys, take out a piece of paper. You're gonna write an essay describing your mental health challenges to me. Probably don't. We'd probably make up most of it because we wouldn't feel as comfortable sharing those kinds of things. So think about the kinds of people that you would share those things with. And if you're the kind of person who thinks, wow, I would share these things with anybody, then you might be in that category of somebody who feels a little bit lonely. Alone, sure, but if you don't have anybody that you can share these things with, then you probably do feel like you're alone. And I mean that in the negative sense of being lonely. Like if it's just you in the world, you don't have anybody to share these things with. He's saying it doesn't come from having no people around. It isn't just being by yourself. You can never be alone, but you can feel alone all the time. But it comes from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. And these might be the things that are important to oneself. So I guess I'll ask that question. What are the kinds of things that seem important to ourselves? Or better yet, why would we be unable to communicate those things?
Fuck you.
Yeah. When you get a message from somebody, you're trying to figure out what they mean by that.
Yeah.
Because there's no context to it, there's no facial recognition, there's no interaction. Yeah. The reason I asked that for various reasons, but the misunderstood part is really hard. Because even if you're communicating face-to-face sometimes, you're not going to be understood. One of the reasons that we do this whole, the first week of class, I believe it was, I asked you guys, why are we here? What do we do this for? English language arts. And a lot of times we give answers like, oh, so we can have a better future. What does that mean? How does Jung here help you have a better future? Can he? Oh yeah. He's one of the most important clinical analytical psychologists to ever live. This guy figured out stuff way back then. Look, he died in 1961. This guy figured out stuff in the early 20th century that we're only discovering today are even actually real. Any of you guys ever play Assassin's Creed? Those games? That's this guy. That all comes from him. The whole idea that there is such thing, the anima, that comes from him. You have the whole idea about genetic memories, that comes from him. He postulated this stuff before we even knew about DNA. He said that you can inherit memories from your ancestors, and he said that that's one of the reasons that we have a phobia of snakes. He says that's why we have a phobia of of spiders. I mean, you think about it. Why would you have a fear of serpents? A lot of people have a fear of serpents, and they've never even seen one in real life. They've never handled one for sure. They've definitely never been bitten by one. So how is it that we can have such a fear of these things that we've never interacted with before? And if I ask you to explain it, you might be like, they're just, I don't know, creepy. Why? Are you afraid of worms? They look a lot alike. No, but it's different. Okay, what? What's so different about it? Oh, they're just, What does that mean? Explain what you mean by that. Don't worry, it's too much. It's too hard to explain. That's one of the reasons that we do this whole language arts thing. It's so that you can explain yourself. Because if you don't explain yourself, I'm going to interpret you in a way that probably is not going to be particularly charitable to you. And if I have an interest in understanding what you're saying, I can try really hard and go, okay, so what they might mean by this, and I read it in the best possible way. If instead I'm incentivized to read it in the worst possible way, you're going to hear me say something like, so what you're saying is, whatever comes after that is probably the worst way to interpret what it is that you just said. No, that's not it at all. That is not what I meant at all. Well, then what did you mean? It's just so hard to explain. Because it can be frustrating when, even if you master the ability to explain what it is that you're thinking about something or feeling about something, there's another part of the equation, which is the other person's ability to understand what you're saying and their willingness to understand what you're saying. Both of those two things are important. You'll hear some people who are very, very educated, have lots of degrees, and then you try talking to them and you don't understand a damn thing that they're saying. And you might be like, oh, it's just because they're really smart. No, maybe part of the reason that you're supposed to do that stuff is so that you can make yourself understood, to be able to take very difficult concepts and explain them in simpler ways. It isn't always easy to do. And sometimes, the problem is our ability to understand. But when you start using these really massive words that no one's going to understand, that's not a good thing. It doesn't show that you're smart. It shows that you don't have the ability to be understood. And what's the point of having all the knowledge in the world if you can't connect with people and use it for some good to help people or to be understood? What's the point in understanding yourself completely if you can't explain it to another human being? I'll give you a heads up. There is no point to it. You'll be self-satisfied you'll be as self-satisfied as you are alone and lonely, because the real connection comes from that ability to be understood, to understand somebody else, and to be understood. And so that's why this is such a hard one. That we could be misunderstood, because again, you have to have there's a lot going on there in communication. You have to have the ability to say something. And you have to have the right words, you have to be precise. And that's, by the way, that's really hard. What's this? A marker. Describe it for me.
It's red.
It's red.
White, and it's a dry erase marker.
Red, white, it's a dry erase marker. Anything else about it?
It's from Office Depot.
From Office Depot. How about its shape?
It's a white marker.
It's like cylindrical.
Cylindrical. Very good. Yeah.
Holes on the top.
Yeah. Holes in the top. Very good. Now, describe love.
Can't see it.
Passion.
That's what's hard about it. What's passion?
That's like more information. That's like a lot.
Yeah. But it's
There's different types of love.
what's that?
Yeah, there's different types. There's a lot.
See how complex it gets now all of a sudden.
See, it gets complex.
And the reason it gets complex is because I can't hold it up to you and go, all right, describe love. It isn't something that's physical. It's something that's abstract. But don't miss this, man. Isn't it so interesting that the most important things in our lives are the things that are abstract and very difficult to explain? What you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you've been through. You can even, I can tell you an experience I've been through. A friend of mine fell out of a truck and broke his arm.
Nice.
Yeah. Neat story, right? No, there's a whole bunch more to the story that I could tell you the events that led up to it, but it was kind of like we were saying before about telling a joke. You know, good example. Last period, somebody mentioned something about how you could be afraid of someone gets pregnant and they're a teenager and they're afraid of telling their mom, you know, whatever. And so I asked, what do a pregnant teen and her fetus have in common? They're both terrified their moms are going to kill them. That's funny. Now, fast forward 2 weeks, I'm in the principal's office. So you told a class, what do a pregnant teen and a fetus have in common? They're both terrified their mothers are going to kill them. That's different, man. It's in the delivery, you know? And it's not, and then the delivery happens because of an interaction. Imagine I walk up on the first day, you guys all walk in here and you guys see me, and the first thing I say to you is, what do a pregnant teen and her fetus have in common? Yeah. And then hopefully you guys know me well enough right now to know that if I'm telling that joke, I'm not making fun of abortion. There's a point to it. All dark humor has a point to it. There's a purpose to it. It does something. It tells some truth about something. It gets to the core of something. And so that's a kind of a joke that you can't really walk into a room and tell people unless you know them, or unless they're expecting a joke from you, something dark humor from you. And so if you're intentionally misunderstanding it, well, then there's no hope in that conversation. And that's why, like with communication, there are so many moving parts. Again, you have to have the ability to say what you really are thinking and feeling. That's hard because it's not a marker. It's an emotion. It's a feeling. It's something that you can't see, touch, taste, feel or smell. You have to be able to explain something, and that's probably going to have to happen through analogy. Oh, okay, it's like when that's the best way to do it for a lot of us. And so that kind of depends on us having a similar experience. Like if I were to say to you guys, okay, so, all right, so you guys know like when you're standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, right? No. You've never been in front of the Eiffel Tower?
No.
Shit, okay. You know like when you guys go, when you go skydiving, right? No. How do I do this? That's the thing about analogy. You now only have to be able to understand your own feelings, but now you have to find a way of explaining it in such a way that actually connects with your audience. Your audience has never been to the Eiffel Tower or skydived over the Eiffel Tower, or skydived into a country over the weekend, into a rave or whatever. Well, that's actually not a bad example. You guys saw what happened over in Israel this past weekend. I spent a lot of time in Israel. I was in Israel one year when the rockets were coming into Tel Aviv. So when I see these videos of the rockets coming in, I'm like, I've been there. I've seen that. But if I were to try to explain it, it's very difficult because it's a feeling that you have. And so it's interesting that the things that are hardest for us to communicate are the things that are the most important to us. How we feel, what we're thinking about things. And again, you have to have an audience that's capable, an audience that's willing. And now, I wonder how many of us right now are thinking about something that has nothing to do with what I'm saying right now. Like we're zoned out and we're thinking about something else. Maybe the only thought we've had is he still talking? So now you also have to have an attention. Like you might care what the person has to say. You might have the ability to understand it, but you also have to have the ability to put your attention on what they're saying. And that's hard. When someone's telling you about how they feel and they go on about it for 45 minutes, you ever look at someone for so long that your eyesight starts to do this? and you can like almost feel them going farther and closer and farther and closer. And while you're doing that work, so they ask you, do you know what I'm saying? You're like, uh-huh. Oh yeah. It's like skydiving. It's like standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. So this is one of the things that makes communication so difficult for us, man. And sometimes we may sit there and just be like, it's just not worth it. It's not just about being alone, it's about being able to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. So, it's already been 30 minutes. I don't think I can use any of this video. I don't think it was interesting enough.
Well, one of your students did say mental health, but
I could use that. I could just put that in the beginning clip. Your mom's a hoe. Whoa, what the hell? And everybody, well, hey. So let everybody wonder what the hell. And then I'll make like a trailer for a movie and then not put it in the actual videos. And then everyone's waiting to find out why that happened.